Hey everybody, Mike Wolfer again, and this is Graphic Tales, the YouTube show for comic book creators, comic book publishers, comic book readers, and those who could never choose between Quisp or Quake. This is part 2 of a 2-part episode, and the subject is comic book artists. I have a lot of tips that I want to extend to you, things that maybe you know and you don't want to hear it again because you're sick of hearing it, but I'm going to tell you anyhow. In the first episode, tips 1 through 5, those were dealing specifically with drawing. These 5, 6 through 10, tips 6 through 10, these are dealing with some very serious matters, and these are about the business of comics and how you should conduct yourself with a publisher. You have your rights, okay? You have your rights, and you should not be afraid of the publisher. So we're going to go over some things that you should and should not do. It's a trippy, well, it can be trippy, but it's a tricky landscape to maneuver, and maybe I can offer you some help here. I did want to do a little bit of cleanup from the last episode. I showed a thing that I called a comic book template when I was talking about the dimensions of the comic book page and how there are three dimensions or three measurements that you have to keep in mind: the bleed line, the trim line, and the safe line. But I didn't explain exactly what this piece of paper is. This thing I use every time I draw a comic book page. I have ruled out all of those, the bleed, the cut, and the safe areas on this piece of Bristol. And this is by, the specs needed for the current printer that I use. You see these little cutouts that I've made? I cut those out, right? In the corners of all those areas. So when I have a new sheet of paper, I lay it down, I lay this over it, I line it up, and then I take a pencil and I just mark those 3 corners, and then those 3 corners, and those, and those. And I don't have to use a ruler. It takes an extra probably 10 or 15 minutes to measure everything out and make all the marks. But using this template, all I have to do is lay it on top of the page and make 3 little dots, make a couple of dots, and then I can just put the lines between them. So that's what that thing is. Anyhow, this is going to be serious stuff, and to prepare for that, I mix myself a delicious Campari. Oh, that's so refreshing. All right, so let's dig into it. Tip number 6: no contract, no work. I think that just about says it all, right? No contract, no work. If you are going to be working with a legitimate publisher, or even an illegitimate publisher, you need to have a contract. Now, a lot of us, especially in in small press and among self-publishers, we tend to work with friends, and we just hook up with whoever we can that happens to be a writer or an artist or whatever we need, and we pool our resources, and we put our own books out. That's all really cool, and it's a romantic dream. We're gonna create our own thing, and we're gonna be comic book creators. You need to have a contract. It doesn't matter whether you're a writer, an artist, a letterer, a colorist. You should get a contract. Now, I'm talking from experience here. I have worked with friends, and I've worked with good friends. And I'm telling you, things go wrong, especially when money comes into play, right? Especially when there's no money to go around, then things get really ugly, right? If there's no money to pay people, then people start getting angry and friends start going at each other and all of that. But even when things are good, if you don't have a contract and you do work for someone, they cannot pay you. And you don't have a leg to stand on unless you hire a lawyer and somehow try to prove that you were supposed to do that work for them and they commissioned you. And of course, who's got that kind of money? So get a contract. I'll give you a little anecdote. I was working with a publisher who was a friend of mine. I created 3 different series. They were creator-owned. They were created by me. The publisher needed things to put out. I said, hey, I'll create a new series for you. They said, great, go ahead. So I did. And I built these 3 series from the ground up, created them 100% by myself. Now the publisher told me, hey, listen, I want to be able to shop these around to, TV and streaming and animation and stuff like that. And it'd be much easier for me to do if in the copyright on the Indicia page, it was copyrighted to you and me. It'll be easier for me to sell. And of course, I was, had stars in my eyes and I was just like, oh, this would be great. Oh boy, if there's a TV deal, I'll be famous. Well, there was no TV deal. And in fact, the books were incredibly under-publicized. They were not promoted. They sold really badly. And they were canceled. I never made any money from them. And I never had a contract. Right? Stupid me. I never got a freaking contract for any of those series. Well, a few years went by. I was back out on my own again. And I contacted that publisher and I said, hey, listen, I just want to let you know, since I created these things, I want to try to give them a shot on my own, self-publishing, maybe do a Kickstarter here or there. Publisher didn't like that. Said, no, we co-own it. I said, the only thing that says that we co-own it is some little 8-point type on the inside front cover of the first issue, the only issue that ever came out that has your name and my name. You don't want it, obviously. You canceled it years ago. The response was, well, I don't want to do that because if you publish this on your own, you're going to end up making money from it. Well, yeah, no shit, because I'm going to promote it and I'm going to put it on Kickstarter and I'm going to have my fan base support me because they're wonderful, wonderful people, and they didn't support you because they never knew the book was coming out. Things can go bad really, really quickly. Get a contract for whatever it is that you do. Get a contract. Next up, tip number 7. Don't disappear. I think this one probably speaks for itself. Don't disappear. Just don't disappear. I think all of these speak for themselves. Don't disappear means when you take a job and you're given a deadline, you should stay in contact with the publisher. Drop them an email once a week, just to let them know where you're at and how you're doing. If you get to the deadline and they don't hear from you the entire time, they're going to start getting nervous. They're going to be looking at the calendar and saying, that book is due, and we haven't heard from that person in 3 months. What's going on with them? It's going to make them nervous. And they're going to start questioning whether or not you were a good hire or not. You've got to stay in contact with the publisher. Do not disappear. Keep feeding them pages as you go along. Don't draw 10 pages and then send all of those at once. You can send them one or two at a time. They need to see that you're working and that you're producing the work per your contract that you should have. But yeah, don't disappear on them. Stay in contact. And yeah, that's all I got for that one. Now here's number 8. A publisher is not a bank. Now this can mean a couple of things, but literally a publisher is not a bank. Most publishers are operating on shoestring budgets. Many of them do not have the money up front to pay for the creation of a comic book that isn't going to be published and distributed for, maybe like 3 or 6 months later. They don't have that money half a year ahead of time. So a lot of publishers, even mid-sized publishers, they have to scramble to try to figure out where they're going to get their money from. And a lot of contracts, you'll see, they'll say your deadline is on January 1st, but you'll be paid 30 days, 60 days, sometimes 90 days after publication. That's where it gets tricky, because you're going to do the work in like December, finish it up by January 1st, and you're not going to get a check until what? The next summer? The next fall? Of course, it all depends on when that book is going to be published. So it's really tough for publishers. Sales are kind of down across the board from where they were like 15, 20 years ago. You guys know how bad the market is right now. So it's really, really tough for publishers to operate. And once they get those books out and shipped to the distributor, now they have to wait a certain period of time in order to get their check from the distributor. So it's rough. If you can get good terms that you get paid quickly, that's fantastic. One of the things that I do, and of course, let me pat myself on the back. One of the things that I do with Mike Wolfer Entertainment, the books that I publish through Kickstarter, I take the money that I get from Kickstarter A, and I pay for the printing of Kickstarter A, and get those books out, and then everything that's left over, I blow it on Campari. No, I take that money and I invest that into Kickstarter B, the next one, and on and on and on. That way, when I have artists doing or colorists doing work for me, I can pay them like immediately. As soon as they turn in a page, they'll send me the thing on Facebook through Messenger. Here's page 8. Have a look. I'll go, oh, that's beautiful. I'll jump over to PayPal. I shoot them their money. Like I can pay them immediately. That's the beauty of working with Kickstarter. But you got to be smart, and you've got to roll your money over into the next project. With that in mind, one thing you should never, ever do, and I'm telling you, I have seen this happen. I have been witness to this. Do not get a job. Start drawing a book. Finish 3 pages. And then email the publisher and say, hey, can I be paid for those 3 pages? If that's not in your terms, man, don't ask for it. If you know you're going to be short on money and you're going to need it like that, then you need to work that out in your contract that you're going to be paid by the page, And also, too, to make it even worse, don't contact the publisher after you finish 3 pages and say, hey, listen, I'm having a hard time with money right now. Could you pay me for the whole book ahead of time? What, you mean before you draw it? Yeah, before I draw it. Can I be paid for it? Fuck no. No, you cannot. You can't. You've got to do the work first. I have seen it happen on more than one occasion. Those people that ask for that, they either get fired right then or they never get another job. And I'm telling you this too. The people that do that have these crazy kind of demands of the publisher, which is ridiculous, they end up missing their deadlines. They end up being months behind schedule. They end up jeopardizing the release schedule of the publisher. They get things, that screws things up with the distributor. Now the publisher's in trouble with the distributor because they have a late book that's pending cancellation. I've seen it happen many times. Don't do it. If you want money ahead of time, get it in the contract. If not, do your work, then get paid. That's how it works. Now, tip number 9. This kind of loops back to tip number 7 with the don't disappear thing. Tip number 9 is don't lie. If you are having problems meeting your deadline, tell the publisher. Don't keep it to yourself. And when you do tell the publisher, don't lie about it. Tell them the truth. Tell them, honestly, I've been lazy and sitting on my ass and I haven't done the work. Don't tell them, well, you see, my wife threw me out and I was in jail for a week. Yes, that's a true story. I've heard that from an artist. All the publisher has to do is look at your social media and see what you've been up to for the last couple of months when you were supposed to be drawing that book. And when they see that you've been making posts at this restaurant, and this movie theater, and at this sporting event, and this, like, oh, okay, yeah, I see how hard you've been working on this book and how hard of a time you've had. Do not lie, because the publisher is going to look into what you've been doing. And the publishers aren't stupid. They've heard it all before. So if you think you've got a new one and you can slip it by them, nobody's ever going to know that I just was goofing off. No, they're going to know. Like if you disappear and you don't answer the publisher's emails and weeks go by and they keep emailing you and saying, hello, are you alive? When you finally get up with them, when you get the nerve up, I've seen this so many times. When the artist finally gets the nerve up to respond to the publisher, and the publisher says, where is the work you were supposed to be doing? You missed the deadline. Almost 99.9% of the time, the artist will say, oh, well, you see, I've been working on some layouts and moving some things around to try to come up with some new concepts and blah, blah, blah. Bullshit. You know what that means? That means I haven't touched it because I'm lazy. Okay, that's what that means. I mean, in some cases, people are just busy with their day jobs and stuff like that, or their home life has been crazy. But if that's the case, then tell that to the publisher. Don't give them the excuse of, oh, you see, I've been working on it, right? Because you know what happens next? The next day, the publisher then gets those layouts that they've been waiting a month for, or they start getting pages, that they've been waiting months for. And it's really obvious. Artist answered the email, got yelled at. The next morning, they're working on the book when they've had it for 3 or 4 months and they've done nothing on it. So please do not lie. Be honest. If you're having problems, tell the publisher. They will understand. And if it means that you're going to be replaced on the job, that's okay too. There will be other jobs, but it'll do you so much more good to be honest. Because the publisher might give you another chance and they say, hey, listen, I understand. It's been tough for you. You weren't able to meet the deadline. We can try another one. We'll just give you a bigger window to work in, You never know. But being dishonest is not going to get you anywhere but fired. And tip number 10, is the last one for this episode, and it is Loose Lips Sink Ships. This kind of loops back to the last one where I said, don't lie and the publisher can look at your social media. This is about social media. When you are drawing a book for a publisher, you need to make absolutely sure of several things. Can you talk about the project with others? Can you talk about it on social media? Can you post samples of the pages that you're working on or the cover that you're painting or whatever it may be? You need to clear that with the publisher first. Don't just start putting stuff on Instagram without the publisher's approval, because you might be blowing it for them. You might be revealing something that they didn't want people to know about. You might be making an announcement about a series that they haven't even announced yet. I know it's difficult, like when you draw something and you're absolutely in love with it. You can't wait for other people to see it. It's so hard to not share it. But even myself with my own self-published stuff, every time I finish a page or a cover or whatever it is, I want to share it, but I have to hold myself back for the right time because, there's promotional period that goes with each release, and you want to keep all of the buzz for that release close right around the time of the Kickstarter launch or whatever it may be. If you start talking about something 6 months ahead of time, by the time that book is ready to be ordered and you're asking people to spend money on it, 6 months have gone by and they're looking at it and they're going, didn't this come out already? I saw this last summer. What? I think I already have it. I don't know, so I know it's tough, but try not to talk about the projects you're working on, and particularly don't show artwork if it has not been approved by the publisher. There's been cases where I've worked with artists and they have shared artwork from books that have not yet been published. And they gave things away in the artwork, like they were like, oh yeah, and then on the last page there's this big reveal. And that's the page that I see on Instagram, the big reveal, like 4 months before the book comes out. Oh, just don't do it. So I hope this has helped. As I mentioned in the last episode, I keep coming up with more ideas and more things that I can tell you guys, which is great. That gives more topics for future episodes. This one and the previous one, this two-parter, was just specifically for artists. But we're going to talk about writing, and we're going to talk about lettering and coloring and publishing and printers and Kickstarter and all kinds of stuff. So thanks a lot for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. And follow me on social media if you want. Any of the platforms you see below, you can get up with me if you have any questions or comments. If you want to suggest topics for future episodes, just let me know. So that's it. Next week, I'm not sure where we're going or what we're going to be doing, but it'll be exciting. Exciting enough, I guess. So here's to you guys. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next week.